All right, what's up, guys? Episode 7 of Fascia Friday. Today we're going to be talking about the fascia as it relates to fluid, hydration, and tissue gliding. So this will be the last installation of the Fascia Friday series, and today, again, we're going to talk about kind of like those fluid and hydrodynamics in a more clinical sense, and then the importance of these key features of fascia. So with the previous episodes, we talked about training the four properties of fascia: the viscosity, elasticity, plasticity, remodeling. And I think to end this Fascia Friday kind of like series, I think it's important to kind of talk about the fluid and the hydration piece, just because, in my opinion, I think it's so important to um, look at that in order for us to really bring up all four of these qualities of properties, like when we're talking about tissue and things of that nature. Because when we don't have the proper fluid or kind of like these hydrodynamics, then really trying to get elasticity, plasticity back, it's going to be kind of hard and less optimal when we're kind of training or like treating athletes. So, so when we talk about hydration and fascia, in my head, I always think about cutting an orange into slices. When it's a fresh orange, the juices, when it's like nice and hydrated within the fibers of the fruit, the fluid gives it that like robustness, that healthy look, and bright elegance to the fruit. And when you squeeze the slice, it squeezes out some of that fruit juice. And the slice is still very like pliable, as opposed to when you cut into an aged orange where the slices are dehydrated. All you're left with is the fibrous material, and when squeezed, it's extremely dense, and even like the orange peel itself may crack. So on a basic overview, this is no different to how fascia behaves. So this is why it's so important to have proper fluid dynamics and hydration to promote healthy tissue gliding within the body's fascial system. With the fascial layers, so like on a grand scale, we have like the epidermis, um, dermis, superficial adipose with the retinaculum, the skin ligaments, the superficial fascial layer, deep adipose, retinaculum, deep fascia, and then like the muscles and respective fascial layers surrounding each of the muscles. And so I mentioned that because between all these different layers, when we think about the whole entire like biological system, every nook and cranny is filled with this extracellular matrix and ground substance, which supports and provides nutrition to our cells and all that good stuff. So again, our body's a very like aqueous environment. So this whole entire piece of connective tissue that's in constant connection of our body's tissues, there's like a metabolism, mechanical, viscous, and plastic component to all of them. So with all that considered, you can appreciate how hydration and proper fluidity of these tissues being bathed in this matrix is extremely important to tissue quality and healing of like injuries, even specifically overuse injuries. So again, hydration. 2/3 of the volume of fascial tissue is water. So the fascial system holds fluid that helps movement and circulation, as mentioned, with the extracellular matrix or the ECM. With increasing circulation, more importantly, via training our fascial system, it reduces like the thickness. We can so by reducing the thickness, we can in turn move better. And when it comes to injury or overuse, remodeling the tissues become better as well. So it definitely assists with like healing. So overuse injuries that elicit like edema, chronic swelling, free radical waste, they tend to make fluid within the tissue more viscous, and that's when we like run into again chronic pain syndromes and like movement restrictions. So this fascia system, it relies extremely heavily, as we learned in the past like episodes. It relies extremely heavily on like mechanical stimulation to bring more refreshed fluid movement. So think of it like wringing out a wet towel. During any mode of mechanical load or stress, the fascia pushes water out and then is filled with new fluid that comes in from like the surrounding tissues and the local vascular networks. So the application of finding new external loads can refresh areas that are lacking. So that's why it's so important to train global patterns and vectors to refresh and rehydrate these like areas. So we could definitely appreciate the more importance from a fluids and hydration standpoint, that training certain qualities will again decrease that fluid thickness and not run into those range of motion problems and having like the fibers be super sticky and stick to each other. With that being said, that kind of leads into the viscosity component of fascia, which we are now aware of in training this piece. It's incorporating rhythmic movements, submax like dynamic actions, and just training overall like fluidity of movement. So with that, that could lastly lead into this sliding system we see in fascia, or like the gliding piece, in which proper fluidity allows for optimal movement and gliding between fascial layers, which in turn now we're looking at the importance of hyaluronic acid or HA, which is the main component in the ECM in deep fascia. Um, with HA being that space filling polymer within those layers. And it's even studied now that HA concentration in the epimysium is synthesized by fasciocytes. So, what happens when an athlete of ours runs into injury? You could bet there is always some type of inflammatory response that will somehow augment hydrations, which in turn, for lack of better words, tamper with fluid distributions and could most definitely reflect that within the tissue gliding. And for a lot of us working with traditional high school, college, or even pro level athletes, you see it all the time when the physical therapist or athletic trainer will bust out like a lot of modality tools such as cupping, instrument assisted soft tissue tools, or dry needling, even. But with these tools, I think it's more common to understand why these treatment options are justified from a just pure musculoskeletal point of view. But how do these modalities help um, with the fluid dynamics of things, right? So I guess to preface all this, just an FYI, we are indeed talking about like pain management here moving forward. So aside from like the modes or principles of training these components of fascia, I'll kind of take you real quick through some of the methods I use in like my day-to-day practice when it comes to fluid hydration and muscle gliding from a clinical sense, to rehab from injury, get them back to training, and ultimately getting an athlete back to the playing field. So first is dry needling. Here at Rude Rock, we do that a lot, and actually have a photo of one of our Rude Rock athletes just needling like a low back. And here at Rude Rock, again, we do quite a bit of needling for many purposes. So in a nutshell, dry needling uses non-hollow, very thin acupuncture type needles to get right into muscles to elicit a mechanical, sensory, and or chemical change. So dry needling is a great tool to help with localized pain associated with fascial and nervous tissue, and can help with pain with joints above and below the injury site, especially when we're talking fascial pain, because remember, fascia is indeed innervated, which can definitely be a source of pain. To my understanding, dry needling relies on a chemical response to elicit mechanical changes. So, like this, like cascading of anti-nociceptive and anti-inflammatory responses to change the biochemical makeup of, say, a trigger point, which leads into definitely rewiring your viscoelasticity. So, like to you know rewire it and then kind of allow kind of again that tissue gliding, and then like that elastic component is definitely present. The next one, thermal ultrasound, and this one I haven't used since leaving kind of like college athletics, but another good one in terms of increasing tissue temperature. So if you're not familiar, and not to be confused with diagnostic ultrasound, even it uses sound waves and its vibrations to heat up the tissue. So I'm not completely opposed to this modality. If you talk to any PT or AT, they might say it's pretty archaic at this point. But like many, I see it as a way to heat up tissue temperature and in turn help with blood flow and HA circulation, actually. So it all depends on your treatment philosophies and like athletes you're treating. The next one, I haven't put this up there, but like KT tape. And with KT tape, again, it's kind of like a sensitive topic here, but we're not here to debate whether if it works or not. But the people who advocate it, um, advocate for it, like for its circulatory theory of KT tape. Think of like um, convulsions in the tape, adhesive, lift the skin slightly, creating the circulatory channels to promote fluid movement and blood flow. So again, working all that kind of stuff and helping just with those fluid dynamics. Cupping, we use cupping a lot here at Rude Rock as well. So cupping is another big one that has gained a lot of popularity. And a lot of cupping we perform is for tissue mobility enhancement and tissue decompression. So in terms of circulation, like microcirculation gets disrupted due to scar tissue restriction and compromises blood flow that is vital to nutrient transfer and healing. So also interstitial fluid trapped in that area can also cause secondary injury to surrounding tissues, again making that whole fluid and hydration piece augmented in a negative way. And lastly, it's like more of the soft tissue work. So that could be everything from like visceral manipulations to just working with your hands to instrument assisted soft tissue tools. I kind of just blanketed everything to have this like nutshell kind of explanation. So when we're kind of using our hands, again, HA, like the hyaluronic acid within the deep fascial layers, allows for optimal gliding over like adjacent tissues. So when fluid density is altered, the gliding is changed and contributes to fascial pain and certainly dysfunction. When we think about, like, again, soft tissue work, we're thinking about scarring and scar tissue. So scarring and scar tissue can change the collagen makeup. Type 3 is usually the one that is laid down extremely like haphazardly. So it's like taking just wet tissue and just throwing it on a wall. That's how kind of it lays down when we're kind of healing. Then like type 1. So this affects tissue glide and influences receptive fascial pain. So movement allows to realign those fibers. And that's what we're kind of doing with the hands and the like instrument assisted work. With the instrument assisted soft tissue manipulations and touch, it actually supports the theory of mechanotransduction. So mechanotransduction being we're converting type 3 collagen fibers to type 1, which can restore fascial elasticity and can aid in healing. So again, restoring elasticity through hydration, through just moving fluid. And mechanically, the instrument-assisted work can remove restriction and adhesion and promote tissue temperature elevation to impact the viscosity and impact the viscosity of hyaluronic acid. So I just remember, a couple months ago, one of our Rude Rock athletes complaining of just his knee getting tight again, and no shit, just focused a lot on tissue temperature quality, raising it, and then just kind of scraping along those fibers through that mechanotransduction, realigning those fibers and making those type 3 to type 1. And again, the next day he was like, dude, my knee has felt the best in a while. And all we did was like kind of manual, hands-on, and instrument assisted soft tissue work. So again, don't discredit all that. I know in like the college setting, I was very like limited to, triaging a lot of like football guys and only having certain times to do all the work I wanted to do. But even just through the soft tissue work here, it's made a load of difference of just like perceived pain. So I think, again, the importance of just hydration and all that stuff, super important to raising up those big four.